The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ask the Trainer. Great to see you all. And welcome all of our regular team. And a special welcome to my good friend, Angie Taylor. Hey, Angie.
Hi there,
We're,
Simon. Lovely to be
hey,
here.
it's so funny I get to meet you again after all this time that we haven't been able to meet, which is this is the whole. Okay, spoiler alert. The whole thing is that I just organised this so I can have a chat with Angie.
Good excuse for a chin wag.
Exactly, that's right. So we'll do all the formalities and introductions, but again, another spoiler alert, Angie is a fantastic trainer, both in After Effects and Cinema 4D. And that's just her side gig, because actually she's been an artist and a sculptor for many, many years. And we'll talk all about that as we progress through the 4 decades, is it?
40 years in
Oh my
digital art.
goodness, yes. Absolutely. So you've been actually spearheading the whole movement since the 80s. So this is very interesting. Absolutely. So we'll talk all about that in a second. But the whole point of these sessions, if you haven't joined before, is the clues in the name, Ask the Trainer. So this is a relatively unstructured session where if you've got any questions, ask us and we will do our best to answer them. So like, how do I make a certain thing in a certain software? And if we've got the answer, we'll tell you. If we don't, we'll think about it and make our best guess. But that's the kind of theme of these sessions. So, and also, we just wanted to remind you that we got more sessions coming up. If you go to the events page on maxon.net, where I am sharing this at the very moment, then you can see on Monday, we carry on with our investigation into creating FUI, or fantasy user interface. Fictional, I was told off this week, apparently. This week it's called fictional. Last week it was fantasy. Next week it will be fake. And the week after that, it'll be futuristic. But anyway, so we've been investigating this over the last number of weeks, and we had an amazing interview with John Lepore of Perception Studios. So if you've missed any of those sessions, you can also catch up with them on the recordings that we host on YouTube. Here we go, the Maxon training team. Just search for that on YouTube, and then you can see everything that we've recorded over the last year or so in terms of webinars, and some fantastic new tutorials that have just been added as of yesterday by Master Trainer Thanasis, aka Noseman. He goes into how to make a tutorial. So he's had many years of tutorial making experience, and he guides our other master trainers in how to make tutorials for Cineversity. So this is an amazing series to be able to learn from him and learn all the things that he's found are useful over the years. So I encourage you to have a look at that. And also, just back at the events page, next week we've got the 3D motion show. So we've got another range of amazing guests starring in that. So please come along to that. And then finally, just a reminder, we've got a series of certifications that you can do online. And if you just want to test your knowledge, either in Cinema 4D, there's a free 1-hour test. And then further down the page, there are free 1-hour tests for the Red Giant apps or the suites. So Trapcode, VFX Suite, Magic Bullet, and Universe, you can kind of test your knowledge with those. And then if you get any of those questions wrong, they then link back to the answers or link to areas where you can find more information about it. Fantastic. So hello also to our regular viewers. Hi Kent, hi Barry, hi Anders, hi Marius. Greetings from where you all are. Greetings from Brazil, Barry, hi there. And thanks for the kind comments, Marius. So let's jump into it. Whilst you're thinking about your first questions, let's just have a chat with Angie. So as I mentioned, Angie has been doing all sorts of amazing creative things over the years. I've actually got your website here, Angie.
Okay.
I know you've got some things to share with us, but I snuck in and went to angietaylor.co.uk.
Yeah.
But do you want to give us a brief kind of overview? What sort of things are you up to, or have you been up to, if you had to introduce yourself to everyone?
Well, I guess up till about maybe a year ago, I was freelance motion graphic designer and animator, and also doing training and demoing for Adobe and you guys and a few other people, writing books on After Effects and motion graphics, recording tutorials for LinkedIn Learning. And then kind of COVID and Brexit hit simultaneously, really. And my one-to-one training business, Creative Cabin, was hit quite hard. And around about the same time, a friend of mine who I think you all know, Algomystic, aka Pader, that wrote the Trapcode plugins.
That's Peter Norby, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Peter Norby. Back, I think it was the early 2000s he wrote the first one. I remember buying Shine in 2001, I think.
That's right.
And then that became Trapcode Suite. Yeah.
Yeah. So he'd been tweeting about doing crypto art, and I'd recently got into doing VR art, and I was looking for a way of getting back into doing art as opposed to design work, because I'd never really trained as a designer. I was a fine artist. And I started looking at crypto art, found it quite interesting, and thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. Things were quiet business-wise. And I thought maybe this is my opportunity to go back to making sculpture and art again. So that's what I've been doing for the last year. I thought, right, I'll give it a year. I invested, I think, £1,000 at the beginning. And after about a month, I was able to take that back out. And since then, it's just sustained itself. So I would say I've earned a reasonable income through it. I'm not, you know, I'm not at Beeple scale, but I'm earning enough to get by. So it's great to be able to be making a living out of creating art again.
Are you sculpting in Cinema 4D?
I am sculpting mainly in VR to begin with. So what I tend to do is I sketch out my sculptures in VR, and then I bring them into Forger app, and I play around with them in Forger app while I'm watching TV and things, which is great. And then I bring them into Cinema 4D to optimize them and kind of finesse them a little bit. When I say finesse, my style of work, it's a kind of naive art style. And I've been trying to develop a style that is, I sort of describe it to people as the sculpture version of Basquiat. You know, Basquiat, the artist, who it's all about naive art. It's all about expression and getting things down quickly, and getting your idea rendered really quickly. So I like them to look sketchy and rough. And
You've got, sorry to interrupt you, you've got some examples of this. Let me give you the screen, and then you can tell us about a couple of these examples. I'll make you a presenter. Here we go.
Okay, so yeah, I can show you a couple of examples on here. This is the Known Origin website. So this would be one example, which of course isn't playing back smoothly. I'm on a crappy Wi-Fi connection. There we go. Oops, sorry, I chose the rude one. So yeah, so I do
One question
2D
in.
art.
What do you sculpt?
Sorry?
Just had one question. And what do you use in VR? What are you sculpting with before you bring it into
So there's a
what's that process?
few different tools that I use. I tend to use Gravity Sketch and Masterpiece VR the most. But I have used Tilt Brush in the past and Adobe Medium, but I tend to prefer Gravity Sketch and Masterpiece VR. Yeah, and then as I say, I take them into, these are some other examples. So this is a drawing, obviously. This one here is like a little animated sculpture.
We're seeing three on the screen at the moment. Repressed Expressionism, Do a Runner, and you've just launched into Song to the Siren.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to try and play them because unfortunately they're not playing back too well at the moment. But yeah, so it's trying to develop a kind of a style. It's very similar to my old sculptures that I used to do when I was at art college. I think I might have a picture of those on my website. Whoops. So let me just have a look, see if I've got an example on the home page. Yeah,
Is
so
there, another question from Garrett. Is there a lot of poly cleanup work that needs to be done
yeah,
when coming from VR Sculpt program?
yeah. So these are my sculptures that I did when I was at art college. These are made from wood and metal constructions, and they're huge. They're like 12 feet high. So I wanted to find a way of recreating this kind of style. So I still feel like I'm developing the style, but what I tend to do is I build it out with hulls in Gravity Sketch, and then I bring it into like Forger, sometimes Nomad Sculpt, and I kind of tweak it a little bit in there, and then I bring it into Cinema 4D, and that's where I do the retopology and optimization. So although it's a sketchy style, because I use a sketchy technique, it needs a lot of cleanup afterwards. But that's how I want to create. I don't really want to create by painstakingly modeling, because I don't get the roughness that I'm after if I do it that way. So this way I'm able to sketch something and then just finesse it. Whoops.
That's really interesting. Also interesting how you're doing it in VR initially. And does it help having the sculpting background? Are you using the same kind of expressions that you would use, or the same techniques that you would use in real life?
Yeah, because it gives you that feeling of building from found objects almost that I've not been able to get in desktop 3D software yet. So, and also just being able to like, zoom in and zoom out. So I could be sketching the whole character, and then I zoom in so that I'm in detail in the hair, and I'm just drawing great big brush strokes for the hair. So you can just zoom in and zoom out and actually be with inside the character when you're creating stuff, which is really great. And also using hulls, so the way that I used to do it was I'd find wood and cut it into pieces and then build things from the pieces. And I use a kind of similar technique. So I draw a load of hulls and then I start placing them together in a kind of random way to create the shape that I want. So it's a really convoluted process, but it's to get that feeling of an unplanned model, if that makes sense. So I'm doing it
Absolutely.
intuitively rather than, drawing something out and sketching it and then trying to recreate the sketch or whatever.
It's interesting that you then jump on to, say, Forger, for example, in some cases where you're interacting, like as you said, having a cup of, or having tea or a cup of tea, and sitting down and kind of relaxing and doing it in a different mode. So it's an interesting process that you're not necessarily having that computer experience where you're working with a mouse or a input device. You're actually creating these in a different way.
Yeah, I do kind of need the computer to do any precise work. So, for example, this one here is like there's two sort of styles. This one here's trying to recreate that kind of wood construction and metal style. And with this, I wouldn't really use Forger app. I would go directly to Cinema 4D and just adjust the polygons and do any optimization that I need, and then do add the materials and lighting and everything. Whereas this kind of style, like this one here, this is the kind that I would kind of work on in Forger app, where I want a kind of smoother, more cartoony look, because I'm able then to kind of smooth out the ridges, if you like, between the pieces that I've put together. It allows me to sort of dynamically retopologize it as well, which is quite useful. So rather than have to I'm trying to think. So yeah, I can combine, basically it allows me to combine all the shapes, almost like a Boolean operation. And then as I'm smoothing the object, it will automatically do the retopology for me.
That's interesting. Greg is, by the way, Greg's asked a question and he says he's very impressed by the artwork
Oh,
as well.
thank you.
And he's asking, in VR, do you use goggles or are you just using the environment?
I use a headset. I use an HTC Vive headset. Is that what you
It's
mean?
interesting also. Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
We famously call things by the wrong terms. So goggles, I think,
Yeah,
goggles will
can.
do.
I don't know if you can see my webcam now. Can you?
Yeah.
So this is what I use. This is my. Actually, this is the Vive Cosmos. So I've actually got quite a few headsets. So I've got a couple of Oculus ones, but I don't use them anymore. I prefer the Vives really. And these are the controllers. So these are what you use. These are what I use to sculpt with. And obviously,
What is it about the, sorry.
no, go for it.
I was just curious about, you said that you prefer the Vive. I was wondering, what is it about that one that you like? Is it the controller or the headset or both?
Well, there's two main reasons. First is technically, I think I prefer. There's a sharper picture. There's a wider. I think you get a wider range of color, and it's more comfortable. But then the other reason is it's not owned by Facebook, so you don't have to have a Facebook account to use it. So I think I prefer the way that HTC are going with their products as well. They've just announced a new tetherless headset, but it's aimed at creators rather than aimed at consumers who are sort of playing games. So it's optimized for the creative applications that I'm using.
That's very cool.
It's interesting, isn't it? The world of VR is kind of expanded about out of games from my limited understanding. And when we were having a bit of a chat before, then you were saying that you regularly have meetings in VR with fellow artists and people who are also commissioning and so on. So it's an interesting kind of extension to the community, isn't it?
Is that for me? Or
Sorry, Angie. Yes.
oh, right, yeah, yeah. So that's the other thing that crypto art has kind of introduced me to is the metaverse, which is all the different kind of online worlds that have opened up as a result of it. So you've got things like crypto voxels and Decentraland, which are both independent kind of virtual worlds. But there are people like there's a guy called Jin, who's Dank VR on Twitter, who's working at a combined metaverse, which will basically join these worlds together. And they reckon that's eventually how the web will go, that you'll have these different spaces, but you can also travel between those spaces without exiting VR and going back in again.
Got it.
Yeah, but you don't have to have VR to experience those. You can actually just jump in on your browser and use gaming controls to get them. But yeah, there's a weekly meeting called the WIP Meetup where everyone meets up and they just socialize and they have speakers, and there's trade shows on the metaverse. There's nightclubs. There's a guy that DJs every week, and everyone goes onto Discord and they do things like GIF dancing, where they'll load up GIFs that are dancing in time with the music. And yeah, meetings on, instead of having meetings just on Zoom and GoToMeeting, you'll actually be sitting in a room with other people and be able to kind of dance with them or whatever you want to do. So it's a bit
dance
nuts.
meeting.
It's a bit nuts, but it's quite fascinating as well.
It's an interesting antidote, especially currently where we are not able to visit in person, to be able to have those extensions of those relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and there's so
and
many
also
of.
oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say there's so many of them. Like I mentioned two, but there's things like VR Chat and Mozilla Hubs and uh, well, I can't remember all of them, but there's a whole load of these kind of communication stroke socialization tools that are becoming available.
Kelly asked her, oh, you got
Sorry, Darren. It's Kelly's just got to jump in with a question from Kelly. This is a fantastic question. In fact, I was just about to ask it. Kelly is asking, how has the change from finding physical patronage to NFT buyers been for you? And did that make you, well, Kelly said, did that make you market your art differently? But I would also ask, has it changed your kind of design style for it as well?
First of all, what physical patronage? I didn't have any. So I kind of left. I was a motion graphic designer before I did this freelancing. So I would just work with clients. Whereas creating art, you're trying to sell to collectors. So it's a completely different audience. In terms of marketing, I don't really do any marketing. I mean, I keep my website up to date and I chat a lot on Twitter, and that's my marketing really. So just sort of having conversations and talking about things that interest me. And that seems to be the main platform for people to communicate between collectors and artists is on Twitter. A bit on Instagram as well, but mainly Twitter. And yeah, it's been quite, I wouldn't say it was easy. I was lucky because I got in quite early. So I was able to establish myself before there was a huge influx of people into crypto art. And I think it's a lot more difficult now to establish yourself. I think people that came a bit later have found it harder. But yeah, I mean, I just chat with collectors and artists on Twitter and build up proper relationships with them, and things just happen organically as a result of that.
I've certainly noticed, there might just be my experience, but I've certainly noticed that the people who are making a go of things with digital art have been doing digital art for a while. They've been, that's part of their expression naturally, so it's kind of a natural extension from it.
Yeah.
Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because there's a bit of a divide in crypto art. There are artists and there are designers, and everything gets called crypto art, but the things that they produce are completely different and they have different goals. And I think that question that Kelly asked about, do I have to change my style for collectors? I can't change my style. That's part of the problem that I had when I was a designer. I wasn't ever a great designer because I couldn't make things how other people wanted them to look. They'd always have to be like Angie-fied, a bit broken and a bit grubby and punky looking, because I thought that's how they look best. And people would go, well, that's not quite what I wanted. So I always struggled as a designer. And now, because I'm doing art, I mean, the whole point of art is for you to express yourself and not to be the complete opposite of design. You're not supposed to be making it for someone else. You're supposed to be making it as a true expression of your own kind of feelings or desires or whatever. So, no, it's all completely me. I probably, I've got, like I said, I've got 2 or 3 slightly different styles within it at the moment. And the piece that I'm about to bring out is actually about my dilemma between the styles. Which way should I go? Should I just do that style or just do that style or keep doing both of them? But I suppose that's a dilemma for me.
It's an interesting conundrum for an artist, and I'm reminded of Monet sitting in the Savoy Hotel in London, paying for his elongated stays with paintings. Probably thinking, am I making art, or am I an artisan making these paintings that actually mean that I can stay for another month?
Yeah, I mean, I probably, if I was a designer, and I've seen a lot of designer friends do this, I would go on crypto art and I would just think, right, what's selling and make it. But I just can't do that. I could start doing that, but it would end up looking completely different to what that other person does. Some people are good at that, some people are not. So, and there's probably more chance of those people making money than there are of me making money. So, I would say a lot of what is selling at the moment is kind of classic 3D. Beeple's stuff obviously is sold well, but also there's a lot of stuff that I've seen that is just basically a copy of a tutorial that has sold for thousands of dollars, and I go, so there's good and bad.
It's interesting, isn't it? When you do see that, I remember in Vegas a couple of years ago, walking down the main strip and seeing one of the presets from Particular just that up on the wall, and only the text had been changed, and it was exactly this. I think it was the same color as well. But that's why they're there. That's exactly the perfect use of it. But yes, it's an interesting one then to see that as a piece of art as well. You could argue that that's art in its own right.
Yeah, I suppose it's what people define as art. So I think because at art college you can study design, but you can also study fine art. But both are at art college, so people just think it's all art. But when I say art, I mean fine art. So art for art's sake, if you like. You're not making it for a purpose. You're just making it as a form of expression. Whereas design is for a purpose. And they're both the arts. They're both part of the arts. But they're both different disciplines within that kind of umbrella of the arts.
May I ask you a question, Angie? You mentioned Basquiat, and when you read the biography of Basquiat, he was mostly going into a studio, painting his soul out in minutes often from what he just received as an impression or something like that. And his pictures often were sold wet even. I was reminded when I saw Biebel, he goes into a session, has maybe 15 minutes for a picture, expresses very fast what he just received politically or whatever. And do you see in the tools that you use a similar simplicity or ease to express yourself? Because when I see all your work, it's very expressive. It's more abstract expressionism, Egon Schiele, when I see some pictures also.
Thank you.
And do you see Cinema 4D, Forger, and all of these, where you say you have this stuff in your tummy maybe, and you want to get it out of the screen. How easy is that for you?
Yeah, I think
that would be my question.
That's a great question. And I think that's what VR gives me, is that immediacy of expression. Looking at Basquiat and Beeple, I get the Basquiat thing because for me, because Beeple uses like stock imagery, and I've got like some of my favorite artists, like A Lot of Money. There's a guy called A Lot of Money, and I love his art, but he makes his art out of stock imagery, and I love it. But personally, that doesn't give me the satisfaction, the expressiveness, because I'm not actually creating the image myself, and that's a completely personal thing. But that's what VR gives me. I can just like expressively make strokes, and they might not be perfect, but I like the fact they're not perfect because that says something about whatever I'm doing at the time. I suppose the difference between me and Basquiat is I do that, but then I kind of go and tweak it. I can't resist the tweaking. So I would probably take, maybe half a day to create something, but then a week to finish it. Because I'm playing around with different lighting and different materials, and, finding the way that I want to present it is what takes a longer time. But the actual core of the art piece is very quick and very expressive.
How do you know when it's done?
They're never done. They're never done. You just get to the point where you think everything that you're doing is making it worse. And then you think, right, that's time to stop.
Glad we have backups.
Yeah. Oh, I've got about, my files system is terrible, but I've got about 1 million different copies of every sculpture that I've done. And because I use quite a convoluted workflow, because I go from VR and then I have to export from VR, which is a bit of a pain. And then I import that into my iPad. And then so it has to come out as FBX, and then it goes out again as GLB. And then I can't go straight from GLB into Cinema 4D, so I have to go to Blender and then export it from Blender as a FBX again, and then back into Cinema 4D. And then eventually it'll come out of Cinema 4D as a PNG sequence or a TIFF sequence and into After Effects.
In fact, that picks up a question that Barry asked early on. By the way, everyone, feel free to jump in your questions. We've been having a side conversation with Peter about a Redshift OSL question. So feel free to ask non-sculpting questions as well, because that's our hour here. This is why we're here to do this stuff. And Torrance, we haven't forgotten your question. Torrance has got quite an interesting one about a Redshift workflow that involves After Effects. So that we'll have a discussion about that shortly as well. But just whilst we're talking about the artist world and the VR and the virtual artist world, Barry is asking, Angie, what res and format are your artworks sold on? So I imagine, is that resolution?
Yeah, usually 2K or 4K. But usually what I do is make a variety of resolutions available, because some people prefer, in terms of frame aspect ratio, some people prefer a widescreen format, some people prefer a cropped square format. So usually what I'll do is I'll post whichever I think is the best one out of those framings. And then in the description, it will say, also available. So whoever buys it, I'll send them the files, the alternative files as well. And if I'm sending them a 3D render, on the website, it's an MP4, which is not ideal really for, stripping frames out if people want to show frames to people or have them on their website. So I usually supply them with the image sequence as well from the render. And that way they can do whatever they want with them. And some of them I supply them with the 3D model as well. So they'll have a GLB that they can use in AR, for example. So if they've got an online gallery in the metaverse, they can put a copy of my sculpture in there as a GLB file so that people can walk around and look at it. So there's actually a big exhibition coming up, CADAF online in Paris. So I'm putting a couple of my sculptures in there as VR, as AR sculptures. So they're going to be placed in Paris in locations for the duration of that. I think it's Digital Art Month they've got in Paris next month.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So it's exciting to.
We had another. I mean, so interesting having that as a virtual tour, a sculpture that you can walk around and that you would normally associate in real life, but then you got it in VR and so on. So it's a nice tandem.
The only thing is you don't know what location you'll get, because I was thinking I'd love to do a metal sculpture of a gorilla crawling up the Eiffel Tower or something like that. Would be great to do something like that, like a Angie version of King Kong, but holding on to the Eiffel Tower and going, ah. But I don't think you can choose what location your sculpture's in.
We did have a question earlier on, which was, if you are getting paid in cryptocurrency, how do you then manage that in real life? What for an artist, what is a pragmatic way of dealing with that?
So
essentially, how do you turn it into money?
There's a few different ways. Obviously, you can cash out. So just in the same way that you would go to a foreign currency exchange to buy or sell euros. You can go to places like Coinbase or Binance or Uniswap and swap your currency for back to, US dollars or pounds. Alternatively, there are a few other services, like you can get a credit card that spends Bitcoin or Ethereum or Tezos or whatever. So you can just go into any shop and spend it as you would with any other credit card. So you can, pay for your online deliveries, pay for your pizza, go to the supermarket. And then there's also a couple of services, and I can't remember the name of them, but where obviously there's highs and lows in terms of it's very volatile cryptocurrency. It goes up and down very rapidly. And obviously that makes people nervous. They don't want to take those huge losses, potential losses. So there are companies that will hold your cryptocurrency, and they will absorb the losses, but also they'll absorb the huge benefits, and they'll just pay you a flat rate of 10% interest on whatever they're holding for you. But that's how confident they are that, it's more likely to go up than down, because the percentage kind of reflects their confidence in the currency. But
There's been some stores. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say I buy digital art as well, so I've been buying other artists' art. So I've sort of become a bit of a collector as well.
Excellent. Certainly, you can accept, or rather, some stores in the States have now started to accept cryptocurrency as well.
Yeah, Brighton has, you can go to a coffee shop and pay in Bitcoin in Brighton. There are ATMs in Brighton where you can go and take money out. I assume you put in your wallet address or something, and then it gives you normal money in exchange for whatever. You would type in how many Ethereum you want, and it will convert it to whatever the value is in pounds or dollars. It's a bit, the tax is a bit of a nightmare, but there are accountants in the UK that specialise in the tax implications. It's a bit more complicated than, the usual.
Absolutely, it's new ground, isn't it? I was reminded of the punk spirit from the 80s and how you're effectively doing that right now with the kind of rules are being made up as we go along, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's part of what attracted me to it, because it had that energy that the punk movement had. When I first joined crypto art, it was still, I've considered myself to have been quite late, because I think 2014 were the first, the embryonic stages of the crypto art community. But I suppose I got in just before it got really huge, so it still had that kind of energy of being new and making it up as we went along, and people making art who have never made art before, so creating things like trash art, which is one of the kind of sub-genres of crypto art, where it's, people with no artistic training whatsoever just creating these memes and animations.
It's a great playing field leveler as well, though, because as you say, you don't have to have a specific background or geographical location. It's a great way of being able to express yourself.
Yeah, it's been amazing for people in third world countries. I know people from South America, Africa, India, and well, all over the world, who have been unable to make a living before this out of their art, even as designers, and are from really, poor backgrounds, and they're suddenly making a living out of their art and being able to buy their mums a house or a car. It's been incredible. It really changed some of these communities. I do think there's good and bad in it. The bad thing is most of the money is being earned by 8% of the people within it. And I think there are some of us who are trying to change that. Like I'm part of Dada. So if you go to Dada NYC, dada.nyc, we're a community of artists who are trying to create something called the invisible economy. So instead of there being like a very visible art market where you've got a leaderboard of the top artists and only a few people are earning the big money, we're trying to create something where the money is invisible, because we believe that if you make something through intrinsic motivations, it's more enjoyable and you're more likely to be successful with it. As soon as you're doing something for extrinsic motivations, like doing it for a client or whatever, you start to lose what's important about the art. And also we want to be able to distribute the wealth throughout everyone in the community so that there's enough for everyone, there's enough for everyone to make a little bit of money and make enough to get by. So I don't believe it has to be this case where there are a few artworks that sell for millions and then a lot of artworks that aren't selling anything, that are just as good, if not better.
Well, it's interesting because Kent's got an interesting question for that, but would you mind just telling us the website address for that again?
Yeah, it's Dada NYC, I think. Let me just double check.
And whilst you're doing that, Kent's question was to take your temperature on how you feel about auction houses like Christie's who are getting involved in the space.
Right, yeah, it's dada.nyc. But if you go onto YouTube as well and look up Invisible Economy on YouTube, that's quite interesting to look at as well. Sorry, I lost track of that question.
That's all right, no worries. I'm just searching for these links. I'll post them in the chat as well as we do it. Kent was asking, what's your take about auction houses such as Christie's entering the NFT space?
Yeah, I would prefer that not to happen. I think the whole beauty of crypto art is that it has shaken up the art world and that it's trying to change things, because for too long it's been a kind of tired establishment where it's kind of, it's all about nepotism and money and a closed network of people deciding who's successful and who's not successful. And that's what my concerns were that drove me to finding Dada Art and working with them, because they're the only people, I think, in the community. Hiket Nunk as well, to a certain extent, are trying to do things differently, but it's still market driven. And my concern is that if anything's market driven, it's inevitable that it's going to end up going the same way. It's very hard to avoid a situation where you've just got kind of a leaderboard, and Hiket Nunk are trying to do it differently in that you can't easily just search for an artist. You have to go through all the art to find something you like. And it doesn't name the artist under the artwork. So you're choosing based on what you like rather than who's collectible and who's not. But people are writing bots that can override that. So people are now able to search for artists. So that's what I mean. It's inevitably going to end up like that, I think.
It's interesting. Sorry, go on, Sassy.
I think the beauty of all of that is that everyone can have his own gallery on the website and sell, and you cut out the middleman. When you talk to Christie, for example, which I did a month ago, you have to have a gallerist who presents you to Christie's. So you can't just go to Christie's and say, hey, I have cool stuff and please sell it for me. That's not possible. So you're staying inside of the system that you try normally to get out. But when you take a look to nifty places, or you have that middleman instantly there, but you can choose to have it like Angie on your website, or go to places where it's more, like Dada. In the old days, Dada is Dada. And I think that's where they take the name from. And sorry for my voice. I got a vaccinating shot, and it has torn me apart the last 2 days, and my voice is not back so far. But anyway, I found it very liberating to see that you can sell now. You can instantly have your cash. There's no, the client didn't pay, or so. It's there and it's clean, and it's. I found it fascinating.
Yeah, it is really liberating. And there's also a secondary market as well. So a group of the artists that are now involved in Dada originally fought for that. There's a guy called Maxon and Sparrow, who's also known as Black Box Art. They fought for royalties. So if your artwork sells on the secondary market, you get royalties each time it sells. So it's not just, you sell once and that's it. You can actually kind of, if you're selling consistently, you can build up royalties that will sustain you over the kind of leaner years, I suppose.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best aspects of it from my point of view.
And
Because otherwise you sell something. Oh, sorry.
No,
you
it's
sell something very cheap to a gallerist, and he sells it much higher. Or when you take a look to the Koning, where his stuff was sold inside of the gallery for very low prices, and then sold to client for double or triple the price. It's not possible anymore. What is now, without middleman, you get what you ask for, and I think it's fascinating. I said that before.
yeah. Well, I mean, if someone sells their artwork in the traditional art space, that's it. It's sold. It's gone. That's the end of their relationship with it. Whereas in crypto art, if someone then sells that for a higher price, that's good for you because you get some money back for it. So
yeah.
Angie, if you were a budding artist and you were just leaving university, for example, have you got any advice for somebody in that position, or something that they could do to actually kind of develop their style? And any hints or tips?
In terms of crypto art or just general? Do you mean just
I think
creative?
bracketed with crypto art, given your experience that you've done both.
Yeah, I would say get involved with Hicket Nunk because it's a very easy platform to get on. There's no gatekeepers. You just start, open an account, get on there.
Okay, silly question. How do I spell that?
HICETNUNC. It means here and now in Latin. Hicket Nunk.
Got it.
There's a guide. So I'm part of WOCA, which is Women in Crypto Art. So we started that because, like the traditional art world, the balance is not quite as it should be. So we're trying to kind of give support to women in crypto art and help to encourage and young people to get, to help them to get into it. And on our website, we've got some tutorials on how to get onto Hicket Nunk. So if you go to Women of Crypto Art website, which I'll just tell you the address for.
Garrett's just posted the link for Hicket Nunk as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Garrett.
So it's called Women of Crypto Art, but it's open to everyone. You don't have to be a woman to join. It's for anyone. It's really for anyone who wants to help us to support women in crypto art. But anyone can view the tutorials and look at content. So it's womenofcrypto.art. So there's a course on there on how to get started on Hicket Nunk. On my Creative Cabin website, creativecabin.co.uk, there's a course on how to become a crypto artist. So if you haven't done anything about crypto art and you don't know anything about it, that's I think it's about 10-minute primer on this is what it is and this is how you do it and these are the people you need to know about and all that kind of stuff. There's also a guy called
Adding those
DCL.
links, by the way, into the. Sorry, Angie.
No,
Just to let
there's
everyone know, as you've been dropping all these links, I've been searching for them and adding them into the chat. And if you're watching the recording, they're all in the description in the YouTube session. But sorry, go on.
I was just going to say there's a guy called DCL Blogger. If you go on YouTube and look for DCL Blogger, he's got lots of courses for crypto art related stuff. And there's also a new magazine come out that I'm a contributor to called NFTs. What the fuck? Sorry. I've been told by the person who made it, because I used to say NFTs WTF, and he said, you're not allowed to say that. You have to say NFTs. What the fuck? So that's what it's called.
Say it properly.
Yeah. And it's got articles, monthly articles on, art, techniques, currency, all sorts of crypto related things. So it's worth subscribing to that as well. You can, if you look up NTFS WTF on Twitter, you should be able to find it there. And they have Twitter spaces and clubhouses every week, so you can join in, and there's loads of panels going on every day with crypto art.
I'll add this link as well into the description notes. I'm just doing a search on NTFS and just getting the NTFS formatting for discs.
Oh, right, okay. I'll see if I can find it. Oh, it's NFTS, that's why.
Oh, got it, okay.
Yeah, so NFTSWTF on Twitter. So at NFTSWTF.
Got it. Right, there it is. Posted that too.
Yeah, and so I would just say to anyone, just have a go. And the good thing about Hiket Nunk is people are quite experimental on there. A lot of people post their kind of more formal stuff on Super Rare or Known Origin, and then they post sketches and ideas on Hiket Nunk or more experimental work. So people tend to have more of a mixture of styles on there. That's more what people would expect to see. So it's a good place to start and experiment on. Dada's
Great
fun
stuff.
as well. Dada's got an online drawing tool. So the idea there is it's all about visual conversations. So someone will do a drawing and it comes up on a strip, a horizontal strip. So your drawing will come up and then other people can respond to your drawing. So they can say, okay, I want to make a response to that drawing. So a page will come up next to it where they can either continue the drawing, almost like creating a long strip that's just one continuous drawing, or they can just create a separate drawing that's a response to what you've drawn. So that's quite a nice way to experiment as well.
Yeah. Very collaborative as well. It's interesting. We've had a couple of comments about the punk aspect of all this, and Peter's finding it quite interesting, especially as it seems when punk goes pop or when street art goes legit. It's kind of has some parallels there. And Carl had a great question regarding what Carl calls his trash art, but I suppose that kind of naive style that you've been talking about. Is there something specific about 3D and C4D for that matter that has a punk or indie quality to you?
Ooh. That's a really tough question. I guess not really. I guess the sculpting tools are the kind of closest. I'm not sure how that would relate to trash art though, because most trash art's not 3D, or what's known as trash art within the crypto art community is a very specific style that's done by a few people who were there at the beginning. So it's more kind of glitch animation and kind kind of 2D video distortion and things like that. So I would think After Effects would be more. Actually, Lux I think is perfect for that stuff, because quite often people want it to have a kind of grungy look, and you can use the Lux to create. I think they've got one that's called the Cartridge Family. That's a really grungy kind of look. In Red Giant Lux, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I think
Magic
After Effects and the Magic Bullet tools are probably better for getting that kind of look than anything in Cinema 4D. It's quite hard to get a kind of punky, distressed look in Cinema 4D alone.
There's a lot.
That's why I use VR, because I can get that kind of look in VR, but I would find it really difficult to get that in Cinema 4D. Sorry.
Garrett saying, as a fellow old punk rocker, he appreciates the view. Ask Niverse of your work.
Thank you. I think.
We were just chatting on one of the sessions earlier this week, on the session on Monday about FUI, about doing exactly this, making things look terrible. So you've started off with your beautiful animations and then
I'm an
just
expert
grunging
on
them
that.
up. Yes.
You want your footage to look terrible, bring it to Angie.
It's always amused me, especially if you're designing something, as let's say you were that fictional UI designer and you were designing something for everyone, and then you would mess it up so it's hard to read.
Yeah. I think I did that with Gridiron Flow. Like when I was working at Gridiron and we were making Flow, Sandy, our UI designer, was working with Mark Colleran and making all these amazing, really sharp, beautiful interfaces, because Mark used to design interfaces for film. And then Mark left and Sandy was like, oh, I need some UI elements. And she was like, will you do them? And I was like, yeah, all right then. And it was quite funny because they were just like a little bit clunky and a bit weird. But so I think I kind of ruined the interface. Safety pins and, you know.
Or improved it. We've just got one eye on the time here. The question that has come from John, I think John must have missed this at the beginning, but in case anyone else did miss it, would you just mind telling us your workflow, how you start off with the sculpture and then which programs you work through?
Yeah, I usually start in either Gravity Sketch or Masterpiece VR, or Tilt Brush. I have used Tilt Brush as well. And then I export, usually as an FBX. I take that into either Forger app or Nomad Sculpt on the iPad. I use both of those. And then from there into Blender to convert, and then into Cinema 4D, only because the GLB export can't be imported directly into Cinema 4D. I also sometimes use Blender for the vertex colors because it converts vertex colors really well. And then Cinema 4D to do lighting, materials, and rendering, and finessing, and then After Effects for post-production.
Lovely, thank you. Just on that GLB stuff, have you ever worked with blackthread.io? Because then that's a way of getting GLTF and GLB files in and out.
Oh, right, okay.
So, EJ of School of Motion did a tutorial on this, how to export AR ready GLB and GLTF files. So I've just put that in the chat here. Yeah, I'll send that to you as well.
That'd be great. Yeah, exporting them's not a problem. It's just usually importing them. That's great if there's a third-party solution.
Time for one quick follow-up question from Anders. The grungy look with sculpting. Angie, are you talking about deforming polygons and not just putting on overlays? Is that right? Yeah,
I kind of yeah, I like to kind of create the textures while I'm modeling. almost like putting them on afterwards feels like post-production. It feels like something that I'd have to think about up front, which I don't tend to do. So when I'm working, I want to kind of create as much of the look that I want while I'm working, if that makes sense.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
especially when you're in that artistic mode.
Mm.
That's really interesting, because then that brings it back to our discussion a bit earlier on about the difference between art and when you're being artistic and executing a job, and that kind of grey area in between those two.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think people tend to be skilled towards one or the other, and I'm definitely not very good at doing design work. I'm much better at I'm really good at coming up with things where there's nothing, creating stuff from scratch. I'm not so good at I'm not very good at design. I'm an artist, not a designer.
I would beg to differ,
But it's like editing.
I
I
think
think people are either really good editors, or they're either usually good motion graphic designers or editors. There's very few people that are really good at both, because I think one's building up and one's trimming back, and those are two completely different skills almost.
That's interesting. That's very true. We've had some lovely comments in, by the way, Angie, about this has been a great chat and a very interesting conversation with lots of different aspects to think about. So thank you for that. Thank you for making those comments, everyone.
Thank you.
And I'll just give you a reminder. Let me share my screen. So here we go. If I show this window.
If anyone wants to chat more, I'm always on Twitter. So the Angie Taylor. Angie Taylor.
Angie Taylor.
Well, Angie Taylor wasn't available. So.
And also, you can go to angietaylor.co.uk. That's your main art website. And also, you mentioned your bespoke training, including this VR style training on creativecabin.co.uk.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And if you want to watch this again or catch up on any bits that you missed, we'll be posting this on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel in the next couple of hours or so, whenever it finishes processing. And so we'll have that up there. And I will add in all those links that I've been searching for in the last 20 minutes or so into the description.
Edit out the swear words.
I'm sure no one listening has ever heard a swear word, so it's possibly will be fine. Fantastic. This has been so interesting, Angie, and thank you for your generosity and just like your openness and sharing all those things, because a lot of these questions you don't typically get answers for. We just see the headlines in the papers, but some of those more pragmatic ones, especially from an artistic point of view, are really interesting. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate being invited along to speak to you all, and I've missed you all, so it's nice to see old friendly faces again. Absolutely,
miss you too. And as I said at the beginning, this is basically just Angie and me chatting about stuff. So this was basically all for me. So thank you.
Yeah, anytime.
Great. And also, if you've got any more questions, everyone, please keep reaching out to us, training@maxon.net. That comes to all of us, and we read all those emails, and also that suggests topics for future ones and future sessions. And in a couple of weeks' time, we've got Noseman, who will be talking more about making tutorials and also considerations for becoming certified and what you need to do if you'd like to become a trainer. So please go to the usual place, which is this one. It's the events page on maxon.net, and you can find out more information about those and all the other fun stuff that we're doing. But thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending. Thanks all our guests for answering those questions in the background as well. And we'll see you on the next one of these.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.